Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am here starting my new series, How to Set Up Your Own Fashion Business. In section 1, we are going to be talking about how to start your business in 5 easy steps. As you know, I'm in the middle of rearranging my studio space and relocating, so we are here on my living room couch, and my dog, who's sitting right next to me, may be in and out of the screen, so apologies in advance for the interruptions. As you probably already saw in the intro for this series, my husband is going to be joining us, and I'll be introducing him later, but just a heads up that you'll see him in a little bit. I also just want to let you know that all of the information that we're going to be giving you over the course of this series is not to be construed as professional advice. You should always be consulting with a professional on your own unique situation. So if you are familiar with my channel, you might be thinking, why would I want to listen to you about business? And I'm here to tell you that I have gone through this whole process myself, and so I definitely have some insight into how to set up your own fashion business. And on top of that, I actually also have, in addition to my apparel design degree, I have an accounting degree. And if you're familiar with accounting, you really have to have a great understanding, not only of like the financial side of business, but how businesses are started and run in order to even get your degree. So I definitely have you covered in this series. And the addition of having my husband here as a tax manager of over 10 years will be a big benefit to you guys, and he will definitely be weighing in on some of this information. All right, so let's get into the 5 steps that you need to follow to start your fashion business. The first step is to have a plan, and you guys have probably already seen this kind of information out there, especially if you're watching this at this moment. You probably already have a plan in place for what you want your fashion business to be. In other information that you've probably seen, the number one thing that they're recommending to you is to have a business plan. And while I agree that that's incredibly important, I don't think that you need to spend so much time creating a business plan. It can be a huge roadblock for people to get started, and I'm here to tell you, in my unpopular opinion, that you don't need to spend so much time creating a business plan. It doesn't need to be 30 pages. Now, if you already have a business plan that is long-winded and has a ton of research, that is awesome. That's great. But I do want to let those of you know who are a little intimidated about creating a business plan that it doesn't have to be that scary. The main things that you need to answer before starting your business are who, what, why, when, where, and how. The who is your customer. Who are you going to be selling to? Who are you going to be serving? The what is your product? Are you going to be selling jeans, coats, jackets? Are you going to be making something totally unique and special? The why is, why are you creating this product? What is the purpose behind you creating this new item that's going to be in the market? The when is, when are you going to sell? What is your timeline going to look like? Your timeline does not have to be set in stone, but having kind of a good idea of when you want to launch and kind of what your calendar is going to look like is always great to have ahead of time. The where is, where are you going to be selling? Are you going to be selling online only? Are you going to be selling in store? You need to determine what type of business you're going to be. And the how is by far the most important question to answer. The how is your product unique? How is it different? What is the niche that you are filling with this product? And why does it need to be in the market? Once you've answered those questions, you're pretty much ready to go. You don't have to spend a ton of time creating a long-winded business plan. As long as you can answer those questions confidently, you are ready to start a business. Step 2 is to choose a name. You may have seen, especially if you've been doing other research on how to start your business, that this is not the number one most important thing, but I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. It's so hard to not only set up a business legally, but also to start building brand awareness if you don't have a name. If you don't have a name, you can't buy a domain for your website, you can't set up your social media, and your name doesn't have to be something crazy and super unique and creative. It can even be your name. So don't worry too much about trying to take a ton of time to create something that is totally unique. Like I said, you can use your name to set up your business, but I do want to say that if you're using your personal name, you may be taking on some personal liability if something does go wrong in your business. So you can set up your business under your name and then set up a separate name under a DBA, or a doing business as. So if you're kind of stumped on creating your business name, that's definitely a good option to start out with. Now, if you're thinking of naming your business something else, remember that your business name cannot be the same as someone else's business name in your industry, and that's the important part. It can't be in your industry. So for example, my brand name is Nascent, and there are other companies that are also named Nascent, but there are none that are in the fashion industry, and that's how I'm able to name my company Nascent, even though there are other companies that already exist under that name. But the actual legal name of my company is Nascent Women's, and that's how I've differentiated it even further to avoid any litigation in the future. So if there is a name that you like, but maybe it's pretty similar to another name, you can add other words to it to make it even more differentiated. One of my favorite methods for creating a business name is to come up with some keywords that relate to your business or your industry specifically that you're serving, and kind of go down the dictionary.com black hole of synonyms and look for different unique words that are going to correlate specifically to like your unique niche. You can try grouping some unique words, or you can just keep it simple. For example, with points of measure, that is a unique term to technical design. So I already know just my business name is going to rank higher for searches within my unique niche in the fashion industry. So I know if somebody's searching for technical design or something like that, that they are going to end up finding my website. You also can make it personal, and I definitely recommend this if you're able to build a story around your brand using your brand name. Again, let's use points of measure as an example. Your POM page in your tech pack is kind of like the backbone behind your design. A pattern can't be made without the POM page. A garment can't be made without a POM page. It informs the design. And that's what my mission is with points of measure. It's to be the backbone for people within the fashion industry trying to learn more, who are just starting out, being the backbone, informing them so that they can be successful within the industry. So take that into consideration and see if you can inject some personality into your business name in order to make a stronger brand identity, because that eventually will make your business even more successful. I know that coming up with a name can be super overwhelming. Trust me, I have come up with a lot of business names throughout my life, and it can be really overwhelming and it can be a big barrier to start, but try not to overthink it too much. And like, at the end of the day, think about all of the brands that you love. Do you really know why they're called what they're called, or the reason behind the name of the business? Or do you really care about what they're providing to you? It's more about what the product is and how it serves your customer. So I would definitely say to take some time to think about it, but at the end of the day, just make a decision. All right, for step 3, we want to understand what the requirements are for our specific location and how to apply, as well as setting up a bank account. So this is really where we're getting into like the actual legal part of setting up our business, and I've broken it down into 5 steps. Every country, state, and city is going to have different legal requirements for setting up a business. I've included a link in my blog post, which is linked down below if you're watching this on YouTube, that goes through what the requirements are for each state inside of the US. And so you can go to that page and check out what the different requirements are for your specific state, and it also has some other really good resource links there too. If you're in a country outside of the US, you're going to want to look up what the legal requirements for setting up a business are in your specific country. You can also check your local government website because they'll have a ton of information on there on how to do that. Now, I want to say for this tutorial and throughout this series, I'm going to be referencing my personal experience with this, which is in Washington State inside of the US. And so even though you are probably not in Washington State, you can still get a good idea of kind of like what the framework is and how it might relate to your specific state. Okay, so the first step is to file federally. You're going to want to go to the IRS and you are going to want to file for an EIN. On the IRS website, it is labeled as apply for an employer ID number. And on that page, it will walk you through kind of all of the steps for filling out the form. You can think of your EIN number as kind of like the social security number for your business. When you're setting up a bank account, when you're setting up different accounts through other businesses that you're buying through, you're gonna have your EIN and you're gonna reference that all the time. So definitely keep that number handy. This is also the identification number that you'll use to file taxes for your business. When you fill out the form to set up your EIN, that's where you're going to choose what entity type that you're going to be. And I'm going to bring in my husband to talk a little bit more about this. All right, guys, so I have brought in my husband, Richard, here. He is a tax manager of over 10 years, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the different business entity types that you'll see when you apply for your EIN.
Such a pleasure being here with you and your audience. And I'm happy to provide some insight in this complex matter. You know, I think Natalie already gave some of the appropriate disclaimers, but, you know, there's a lot of nuances that go into these decisions.
It's okay, I already apologized for the
There's
dog.
a lot of nuances.
There's
a lot of nuances and complexity involved in these decisions. And, you know, these are just overall guidelines and pieces of information to help guide you. If you have questions about your specific situation, you should definitely go seek out professional advice.
All right, so can you explain to them a little bit more about what a sole proprietorship is, how it's different, or like what makes it unique and why they might want to choose it? Because this is what I am as taxed federally as. I'm taxed federally as a sole proprietor, even though I'm set up as an LLC through Washington State.
Well, so a sole proprietorship at its base level obviously can only have one owner, and it's really the simplest entity and reporting mechanism available to individual taxpayers with businesses. You know, in terms of being simple, you just report it on a Schedule C with your 1040.
It's a little bit like less cumbersome because you don't have to file an additional tax form. So you can file it with your individual tax return on a Schedule C.
So for a sole proprietorship, you don't even need to set up a separate legal entity to file this. This is like if you just have a for-profit business that you're the single owner, you can just file this schedule, or well, you're required to at least file this Schedule C as sole proprietor.
Yeah.
I would recommend though that you do generally want some extra legal protection by setting up a separate entity, so that just keeps set up a business, because then that limits your liability, and that's the exact purpose of, in Washington State we have LLCs, which is a limited liability company. So in case you get sued, God forbid, you know, they can only go after your business assets and not after your personal assets, like your home or
which protects you a lot, which is what you should do.
So I highly recommend that. But yeah, you can still set up an LLC and report that for federal purposes as a sole proprietorship. But yeah, again, a sole proprietorship, just the easiest kind of method to report what you need to report for a single owner business.
Yeah. So then the second is a partnership, which obviously is between two or more people.
So exactly, a partnership, it's required that it's two or more owners, your partners. That is two owners entering into a business arrangement for profit. In a partnership, they're incredibly flexible. You can make almost any sort of deal or agreement with your other partner or partners in terms of allocating ownership based on how much you work, allocating income, allocating losses. I mean, there's so much flexibility that you can write into the operating agreement with your partners.
Right. And we actually had an audience question that came through that we'll answer in section 2 that kind of like goes a little bit deeper into like why you would choose a partnership.
With a partnership though, that does require a extra tax return, a whole separate tax return other than your 1040. It's a form 1065. So a separate tax return and then it'll issue K1s, which is what allocates the income or losses to the various partners, which are then reported on their individual tax return form 1040.
Right.
So there's a little bit more complexity in terms of reporting, but the flexibility that entity type provides, partnership provides, can be very powerful.
Great.
In getting what you want out of a arrangement.
Yeah. And then the next two are an S corp and a C corp, and if you have like looked into different business entity types, you may be a little bit confused about how these are different. So I think this will be really valuable to kind of explain how these are separated. So let's start with an S corporation.
Yeah, so an S corporation, that can be a single owner, so like a sole proprietorship. You could make the election to file as an S corporation, and same with a partnership. You can make the option to be taxed as an S corporation. So it can be single or multiple owners. There are certain limitations with how an S corp operates. So this is the difference between an S corp and a partnership, where the partnership allowed you all this flexibility with your partners in determining allocations and this and that. An S corporation, the rules are much more strict, in that, okay, you can still have various degrees of ownership. So I have 30% ownership, or you have 70% ownership in the S corp, but the rules are more strict in that we have the same class of stock, meaning that if you take distributions, I need to take distributions. They all need to be pro rata. Everything needs to be pro rata, pretty much all the time. And so again, back to partnerships, the flexibility part, if we are taking distributions from a partnership, you could take distributions and I could just leave my money in the partnership. And there's no rule against that. But with an S corp, like everything kind of needs to be mirrored or pro rata by ownership, for all of the owners. So there is a little bit more limitation in that regard. But then the pro of the S corp is really that this is a much more complex matter to get into, but basically the advantage of an S corp over a partnership is that a partnership, all of your income is going to be subject to self-employment tax. That's kind of your employer's share of Social Security, Medicare, FICA, that sort of stuff. You're going to be picking up that on all of the income. With an S corp, though, none of that, all that excess income isn't going to be subject to self-employment tax. But at the same time, you still need to take an appropriate wage with an S corp.
Right.
So you are paying some, but not all of it. So usually with an S corp, it doesn't make sense to move from a partnership to an S corp unless you're making, the figures kind of vary, but it doesn't really make sense unless you're really netting net profit over 100,000, a little over 100,000 or so. It just doesn't make sense to play that self-employment tax game.
Okay, so then let's talk about a C corporation.
So a C corporation, I mean, that's the entity type that you think of when you hear about all these publicly traded stocks, all these huge corporations that are publicly traded that you hear about every day.
Right.
Amazon,
Walmart, I think
Coca-Cola, I mean anything.
American Apparel, I think is.
Most everything publicly traded is going to be formed that way. And I would say in a lot of this setting, in most business owners' situation, it's not going to make sense to be a C corp. Right. Couple reasons why. I mean, you'll have 2 layers of tax. The C corp pays its own taxes, and then to get money out, so you probably pay yourself some sort of wage as the CEO or something like that. But then to get any other money out, that's all going to be taxed as dividends.
Right.
So there's 2 layers of tax. The entity's paying the tax, then you're paying it again at the individual level to get money out. So that's kind of a determinant. There are more stringent rules. You have to kind of have a board. You need board meetings.
Yeah, it
There's
gets very complicated.
a lot more requirements in terms of the organizational aspect of a C Corp. And then, again, that's another tax return. Same with S Corps. I didn't mention that's another tax return, a separate tax return. But, the biggest reason for a C Corp, it would be when if you're planning on getting a lot of outside investors, you want different classes of stock.
Yeah. So it is possible that other businesses other than fashion businesses, which I mentioned in this tutorial as well, could be watching this video. So, it may apply to someone watching this, but in most cases, this isn't going to apply to you.
Yeah, exactly. The main reason for an S Corp is it's so much easier to raise money or even to go public. But I think for most people, that's not going to be the case.
But those are all great, getting an understanding of different business entity types and how they work is an important part of even owning a business. You have to be responsible in understanding how businesses work and how they're all different. So now, kind of like we talked about, every state has different entity types as well. So in Washington State, you can be an LLC, and it's going to be different for every type of state. There may be something that's specific or different.
All states, all different countries, they all have their own lingo, their own language of what they call these different businesses and entity types. And there's different rules.
Sorry, but federally in the U.S., these are the four main business entity types.
For federal U.S. tax purposes, there are literally only those four options. It doesn't matter. So if you're an LLC, well, you still need to be one of those other three choices: sole proprietor, partnership, or S Corp. If you're an LLC, you obviously can't be a C Corp. But
and you should be obviously checking with your accountant for the specific rules around your unique situation. So always talk to a professional, but these are kind of some good guidelines so that you get an understanding of what you're looking at, so you're not just walking blind.
Yeah, and exactly, that's kind of what I was trying to allude to. There's so many details and nuances between these entity types, your personal situation, that me just talking in this general sense is not enough.
What did we always say in accounting? He was actually my tutor in accounting, and then we fell in love, and now we're married. But we would always the answer for almost every single question was "it depends." It always depends.
That's my favorite.
That's
answer.
Our phrase.
Depends.
It depends. So, so thank you so much for popping in on this one. You guys will actually see more of Richard in the next section, and let's get on to the second part. All right, so the second step is you're going to want to file with the state, and this is your UBI number, and in your state it might be called something a little bit different. You'll use your EIN to request your UBI through the Secretary of State. On this site, you'll go into the Corporations tab, and on this page you'll have listed out all the different business entity types. For this example, let's use an LLC. Under LLC, you're going to choose Certificate of Formation, and then you'll fill out this form in order to complete the filing with your state. Once you've done that, you'll get a UBI number, and you'll use this for a lot of different forms when setting up your business. If you have any additional types of licenses that you're applying for, you'll use your UBI number in order to apply for those. After you have completed the Certificate of Formation, they will send you a state business license, and that may, in your state, include an additional form as well. Okay, so now that you have your EIN and your UBI, you're going to want to set up a business bank account. And while this isn't necessarily required, I highly recommend this. You want to be sure that you're keeping your personal and business finances completely separate, and the easiest way to do that is with a separate bank account. This protects you both individually, and it also protects your business. A lot of banking institutions offer small business bank accounts, so you'll just want to do your research and figure out what banking institution is best for you and your unique needs. And the fourth step is to file with your city. You'll use your state identification number for Washington State, that's a UBI, to apply for your city license. For my city, they also gave me an additional ID for my city business license. And depending on what city you're in, you may also owe city taxes in addition to the other taxes that you'll need to pay for your business. And finally, you are now officially a legal business. If you have employees, there are some additional things to consider, like workers' compensation, unemployment, insurance, just to name a few. There's a ton of different requirements, but I'm not going to go into all of that right now. You can go to your government agency websites and they'll give you information on this so that you're sure that you're following all of the rules. Also, depending on your type of business, because I know that there's probably some of you out here who are watching this who aren't necessarily setting up a fashion business, and in some cases this may apply for fashion businesses too, but there are other licenses that you will need to get based on what type of business you're doing. So for example, I am a fashion business. I take raw materials like thread and fabric and make it into finished goods, which are finished pieces of clothing, which I then sell. And so I applied for a reseller permit. And what that does for me is it allows me to buy those raw materials without paying tax because the final garment that I'm making it into will be taxed. So I thought it might be helpful, even though it's probably going to be a little bit different in your location, to give you guys a rundown of what it actually cost me to set up my business. So let's see here. My certificate of formation, so that's with the state, was $200. My state business license was $25. My Secretary of State initial report, which is due 120 days after you start your business, was $30, and then my city business license was $150. So that's a total of $405 that I paid just to legally set up my business. The application for your EIN, you don't need to pay anything, at least in the US, and for my reseller permit, I didn't need to pay anything either. Also, keep in mind that when you set up your business bank account, they'll probably require a lump sum to set up your account and then a minimum amount to maintain your account. So for me, I had to put down $3,000 to set up my bank account, and then I have to maintain a $300 balance to keep my bank account active. And every banking institution is going to be a little bit different, so definitely look into that to see what's going to fit within your budget. All right, step 4, and I just labeled this one start, because if I could go back and tell my younger self what I know now, which is I was so worried about making sure I was doing everything perfect and making sure I was totally ready before I kind of like jumped into things, that I really didn't spend a lot of time actually doing the work. I was spending so much time planning and just trying to make sure I was following all the right steps and not missing anything. So I know that setting up a business feels totally overwhelming. Like, trust me, I know. It feels really overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. And what this step 4, which is start, what I'm trying to say here is that there's so much that you can do even before you legally set up your business. There's so much that you can be doing just right now to start your business. And I wish that I would have started my social media presence earlier, because I would have more people invested in my brand and I would be way further ahead than I am now. So I hope that I can pass on my wisdom to you. And if you're considering setting up a business, just start your Instagram page. If you change your mind later, you can delete it. Buy a domain. It's so easy to just do some simple things to get started now, and you can start gaining some traction. So I wanted to give you guys a list of some of the things that I wish I would have started right away before even thinking about legally starting my business. So the first one is setting up your social media accounts. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, whatever it may be. Set that up. There are even free blogs that you can set up to get things started, and then you can transfer that information over once you're ready to buy a website. And if you're ready, you can purchase a domain. You can start building your website right now. You can create a logo. If you look at my business, Points of Measure, the page that you're on right now, my Points of Measure logo is not something that's like crazy and took me a ton of time to design. Even though I'm a designer and have worked on a ton of graphic design as well and have experience in that, I didn't want to take the time to create all these fancy logos that I may or may not use. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. So I have this very simple text logo, and All that matters is that I continue to use that and I'm consistent with it so that when people see it, they start to associate it with my brand. So try not to take it as being overwhelming, just do it, just start, and you can always change things later. That's the great thing about owning your own business, and that's one of my favorite things, is you can try something, and even if it doesn't work or if you don't like it, you don't have to keep doing it. You can change it later, or you can go back and fix it. I mean, you have so many options because you're the one that's in control. Some other things that you can do right now are to choose a brand color scheme. I'm including this because you're probably a fashion business and you probably love the creative side of this, and that is one of my favorite things to do. Whether that's taking a picture that you're inspired by and pulling colors from it, or maybe you have a wardrobe piece that you love the color composition on. Just taking the colors that you really enjoy and starting to build a brand around things that you're already passionate about. Also, you can start to do tons of research on SEO, social media marketing, website development. I mean, there's so many things and so many different hats that you're going to have to wear as a business owner. So getting some ideas of how those things work now will put you so much further ahead in the long run. Now, I don't want you to get bogged down in research because I still do this to this day. I will get distracted by research and basically use it as like an excuse to not actually be doing work. And while it's great to be prepared and it's incredibly important, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and jump in the deep end and figure it out as you go. So don't let your research stop you from actually doing things. And finally, one of the things that you can work on right now is the design and development of your product. All right, and this final step for setting up your business, I think is really important, and in a lot of tutorials that I've read, it kind of skims over this part. So I really want you to understand kind of this idea of being flexible and staying updated throughout your business. So you need to understand that your business licenses will need to be periodically updated. And every single year or every 2 years, there's things that you're gonna need to do with your licenses and permits so that you're staying updated and making sure that you are still actually in business. On your licenses, it will say when it expires, and the agencies who manage your licenses are pretty good about sending you reminders about renewing your licenses because they want to obviously get their money. But I'm not the type of person to rely on someone else to make sure I'm doing what I need to do. So I keep all of my licenses in a binder, and I have them all in protective sleeves, and the most recent license is on top so that I can see really easily when it's going to expire. And then I take those dates when they're going to expire and put them onto my calendar so that I can keep that updated. And depending on the timeline for renewals in your state or country, it's usually going to be the same time every single year. So eventually you'll get used to having to renew them every year. Also note that if you are a brick and mortar or you have customers coming into your physical place of business, you are going to have to display your permits or licenses so that the customers can see them, and your specific agency that manages your licenses will have the information for that for you, and a lot of times it's also on the back of your licenses, so it tells you where it needs to be displayed and under what conditions. So here is a list of the different renewals that are required for the state of Washington, and obviously it'll probably be different in your location, but like I said, it's very easy to find the information for this. So for me, my city taxes are yearly, my federal taxes are yearly, and my personal property taxes are yearly. I have my city business license, which needs to be renewed every year. And I have my state business license, which needs to be renewed every year. And that's renewed through the annual report, the initial report that I was talking about earlier. After that 120 days, then you do an annual report, and that is what is actually updating your state business license. And then for me, I have my reseller permit, which is updated every 2 years. And here's a breakdown of what I pay every single year to renew my licenses. For my federal, city, and personal property taxes, I pay that in proportion to my income. And then I have my city business license, which is $150 every year. I have the annual report, which we just talked about, which is your state license, and that's $60 every year. And then my reseller permit is every 2 years, and it renews at $0. And finally, I just want to talk about the fact that your business may morph and shift as it grows, and that is completely normal. My business has changed so much since when I first launched it, but what's really important is just to make sure that you're keeping the information updated for your government agencies, because that's where you'll get into trouble if you're not keeping things updated. So for example, if you're going from being a service-based business to a product-based business, you're gonna have to update that information with your government agencies. And when you go in to set up your business, you will see where you list that information, so you'll know where to update it. And for me, I have, my state has an actual online platform where I can go in and view my information, so I know if anything is out of date. And usually when you're renewing your license, and this is why they have you renew your license every year, they ask you all of those questions again, just to make sure that you're keeping your business information updated. All right, guys, that's it for section 1. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this 5-step process made it a little less overwhelming for you and made you more confident about starting your own business. If you have any other tips or questions or anything like that, please let me know in the comments. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share, and I will see you guys next week for section 2.